It's PGN's Par 4. I'm Matt Gajtka with Zach Weiss, coming to you from different locations today, but we're together in spirit as we get ready for a major championship and as we continue on one of our biggest coverage weeks, maybe the biggest coverage week in a lot of ways in the short history of the site. But Zach, first things first, Glory's first shot, if you will, playing off of the old PGA Championship motto. The PGA has made some big moves. It used to be the fourth on the calendar, but due to COVID this year, it's the first, even though it's right back in August like it was 2 years ago. So it's been an interesting, strange trip for the PGA Championship, but it gets a lot of hype here because it's the first major out of the gate. And also, as a bonus, the first major for TPC Harding Park in San Francisco. So do you think that the PGA might be the tournament that made out the best from all this shuffling of tournaments this summer?
I mean, without a doubt, just because, like you said, it's major under a major microscope. And I think a lot of times when you look at tournaments and what typically gets played before them, I would say that this time of year with the Open Championship, it's kind of a little bit of use it or lose it in terms of preparation. I mean, typically you have Travelers, Rocket Mortgage Classic, 3M, John Deere. You used to have the Greenbrier there. I mean, some players might just play none of them. I mean, Rocket Mortgage Tiger used to play because it was his own tournament. So of course you have that aspect of it. PGA Championship kind of is in that March, April, May setup in a sense because you have the Masters still teeing up and the U.S. Open, of course, still teeing up as well. So it'll be interesting to see how it all shakes out, but it's going to be bizarre with this being the first major of the year, but it's almost become the new normal too.
Getting back to the question of which tournament might have benefited from all this shuffling, I don't think the U.S. Open lost a lot. Yes, it's going to be going up against football on the weekends, assuming there is football played. But moving to September, probably not ideal for that. The Masters, people are going to turn out and tune in for whenever the tournament is played, I would imagine. So that could be actually quite intriguing to see it being played in November and how that course and how Augusta National in general looks condition-wise. A long way to go before we get to there. But I know we'll be talking about that plenty. And the playoff tournaments, well, one of them was lopped off the schedule, so it goes from 4 FedEx Cup playoff events to 3. I'm not sure there's any real effect there because they're falling at about the same time of the year that they were going to anyway. But, yeah, the PGA certainly gets a bump up here. And as we were talking about last week, we were ready for that major rush of adrenaline after a series of solid tournaments. And we got the Memorial in there, which had a great field, maybe the best field in PGA Tour history for a non-major. And then also last week at Memphis, an awesome scoreboard down at the WGC FedEx St. Jude. So we are building up here, it feels like, and we're getting to, as I mentioned, TPC Harding Park for shot 2 on this week's Par 4, right next door to Olympic Club. But unlike the Olympic Club, Zach, this is a fully public course. I love that aspect of it. The PGA Championship has not always gone to public courses, but now 2 in a row here with Bethpage Black last season in the New York area, of course. And speaking of the Black, I feel like just looking at the conditions in August in San Francisco, if you haven't been out there before, I have once, and you had to pack your jacket, certainly, before you headed to the Bay Area this time of the year. It's not really typical summer conditions. You're looking at marine layer, you're looking at fog, you're looking at probably some wet, dewy grass in the morning, and probably a course that, despite playing at a par 70, is going to be fairly long. And I heard Justin Thomas talking earlier this week, Zach, about how his TrackMan numbers are down, the ball's not carrying. So we're looking at a tough situation here for guys who have been used to lighting up the score sheet and putting down some small numbers on the scorecard so far in this PGA Tour restart. So what do you think? Could that maybe be bad for the drama because only certain guys with a lot of distance could compete? Or could it be really interesting, like the old school U.S. Open style, or maybe even somewhere around even par or higher could win this thing?
It really is. I think a lot of people think it's a bomber's paradise, but I think there's a lot of equalizers that might be able to equal things out. And of course, San Francisco with the marine layer, you never know what Mother Nature's going to bring sometimes too, and who's going to be leaving their heart in San Francisco. Sorry, Tony Bennett. But in all seriousness, we'll have to see how everything goes. I mean, I could see the Cup being under par. I could see the Cup being over par, but this is kind of the first week where it's kind of tough to gauge. I mean, maybe Memorial because of how the weekend went and with it being the second straight week at the same golf course, there was that kind of unpredictability. But of course, you have almost the entire field is familiar with that course, whereas You have a lot more unknown with first-timers playing this course, and maybe the course playing different than it did 10, 11, even as recent as 5 years ago. So in that sense, it's nice. It's nice to see the public course. And Matt, we got to get the budget up so you and I can play out there.
Yeah,
It
that
was
would
worth
be
a try.
awesome to be able to take this place on. Well, let's fall right into our third shot and talk some favorites, as you touched on a few guys who we expect to be up there near the top of the leaderboard. Justin Thomas has won once since the restart. He won last week, obviously, at Memphis, a very impressive performance there. Got the putter going late, but his ball striking was pretty much sublime, and rebounded from blowing that big lead at the Workday Open a few weeks back out at Muirfield Village. So JT's back on top of the world golf ranking too. And for me, he's my pick, at least right now. I think you want someone who's in the fairway, though, so that big miss that's been creeping into JT's game a little bit. I don't know if he's going to catch as many breaks here at Harding Park as he did last week at Memphis on a couple of those tee shots in the last round. Brooks Koepka has been hitting the ball a lot better lately, and the putter's been up and down. Of course, he's consulting with putting guru Phil Kenyon quite a bit and trying to figure something out there. But I like a guy who keeps it in play like him. DeChambeau's the wild card for me because obviously we know what he can do, but he's also he's been playing from the rough quite a bit with some of these huge drives. So that's a concern. I don't think you can play from the rough and score here at Harding Park this week. And then Tiger Woods. We know, Zach, and I'll leave you with this one on Tiger. We know that he's willing to lay back off the tee and lean on that long to mid-iron game to get it done. Now, that puts a lot of pressure on said long to mid-iron game. But if he's not feeling it with the driver and if he feels like the risk just isn't worth it, I think we're going to see a lot of 3-woods, maybe even some of those stinger 3-irons off the tee for Tiger Woods to give himself a chance. He's done it before where he's laid back, but it's going to be the situation where he needs to have a perfect ball striking tournament in order to finish on top, I think, if he plays it that way.
I'll give you my pick straight away. I'm picking Webb Simpson. I'm going off the board a little bit. I'm going with Webb Simpson. I feel like with his game, he hasn't really done too much to get himself down, and he stayed in that upper tier, upper echelon. He's not the first name you think of. He's not the most exciting name. But really, when I think about it, I think a lot of these names that are bigger names are not going to have the weeks that a lot of people think they are. I think this is a course that's going to yield itself to maybe a boring leaderboard just because there's going to be the premium on hitting the fairways. And I think guys are going to get a little bit too overzealous with trying to prioritize distance to get to their comfortable yardages, where really the comfortable yardage is going to be just getting the ball in the darn fairway. If that takes a hybrid, if that takes an iron, and no fans. So there's not going to be any trample down lies. It's all going to be hit the ball in the fairway however you can. I think Brooks is a very viable candidate. I think he's the most likely big name to break out because he's in the form. He's getting in the form at the right time. And for heaven's sake, it's a major. And it's almost like people in the video games, when you saw Tiger Woods, there was a rating for Tiger Woods, and then there was a better rating for Sunday Tiger Woods. And I think that's Brooks Koepka and then Brooks Koepka in majors. Another name that I would actually pay attention to, Rory McIlroy's up there. I think the match play. Gary Woodland, I think, played well in Ohio. During the swing, he showed some flashes. And really, I think the play in Ohio is what most resembles what you're going to see this coming week here at Harding Park. So I really like the Woodland pick as a sleeper. I'm going to also go with Tyrrell Hatton a little bit here. I think it's a little bit off the board in that sense as well, just because he hadn't played in almost a month and he didn't really do anything worth a darn last week at WGC. But let's not forget, he won an event just before the lockdown, and he was in that final group with Daniel Berger, and they were battling each other shot for shot, and that front nine was just anything you can do, I can do better. And really, I know he hadn't played for a few weeks, but I think he got the reps he needed to, and I think it's a course where he's able to have some good iron play. He's able to get the ball in the fairway. He's not too erratic off the tee. The biggest weapon he has that's a blessing or a curse, similar to Bryson, is what's upstairs. I mean, he's known to at times have his tantrums, but I think that Tyrrell Hatton is a name that really could contend. And I think that it's about time that someone across the pond wins a major. And I could see Rahm doing it. He's had the tools for these last 3-4 years now. But I really think it could be a Tyrrell Hatton. I think that he's the most viable guy other than Rory McIlroy that's really been consistent and shown reps I mean, guys like Adam Scott, I think he's a popular pick just because he's Adam Scott and he's steady, but he hasn't gotten any reps at all. He's quarantined this whole time. So I don't like somebody like that. Phil's too streaky. Tiger Woods, I have too many doubts with his back, with walking the course, with, as you've mentioned several times, reps. Just there's too many. Bryson's too much of a wild card. Like you said, hitting fairways is a premium, and his distance is kind of becomes an equalizer because his accuracy still isn't there with that distance. And the last 2 weeks haven't exactly, other than the first round this past week, lit the world on fire like it had been before. But I think if we all had this conversation a month ago, it's DeChambeau and it's not even close. But I think the problem now is you just have to go with players that have the track record at this course, can make a premium hitting the fairways, and also maybe shown that they can hit shots when they need to since this layoff, and guys that are just in general form. Even someone like an Abraham Answer, who would have been a good pick for me a month ago, is kind of lit off as well too. So those are long story short. I'm going to go Webb Simpson, Tyrrell Hatton, McIlroy Woodland, and of course, if I don't say Koepka, then Koepka's probably going to light me up on Twitter. So Koepka too.
Yeah, he'll find you. I don't care who you are. He'll find you out there. Well, Brooks is 10-1. He's co-favorite per William Hill Sportsbook. He and Justin Thomas. I like Thomas. I'm going to ride with him, and I've been a long time fan of his game, and he's won more than anybody over the past 3 years, and it's not really that close. I believe he has 11 wins over the past 3 seasons. Yes, he does, since the start of 2017. I guess that makes it the last 4 seasons. But over the past 3.5 years, 11 wins. I think the closest guy is DJ, and he has 6 over that span. So JT may not be as dominant as some players that we've seen in recent eras, most specifically Tiger Woods. But as far as this era, he's as good as it gets. By the way, per William Hill again, Bryson DeChambeau 11-1, Rory 14-1, Rahm 14-1, DJ 20-1, and Tiger Woods at 22-1. Your pick, Zach Webb Simpson, 28-1. Ricky Fowler 40-1, and on down the list you mentioned Tyrrell Hatton too. He's 45-1 to win this week. Jordan Spieth and Tony Finau pulling up the rear here among the notables at 50-1 apiece. All right, our final stroke here to get the ball in the hole on the par 4. Local coverage, and local is defined a couple of different ways. I'll be right here in Pittsburgh. In fact, on this Wednesday when this video is released on Pittsburgh Sports Live, I'll have covered the Tri-State Juniors Player of the Year presented by Isley's. That's out at the Pittsburgh Field Club in Fox Chapel. Also, the WPGA Open is going on at Shannapin. Going to try to swing by or at least talk to somebody for a story at the end of the week in the arena local roundup. But, Zach, you are going all the way to Toledo, Ohio. You are leaving tonight, like I said, this show posted on Wednesday. Glad to see you get out there. We talked about why you want to get out there, but you're also pursuing some local angle stories here. So it really is exciting for me, the point being that finally we're seeing not just the PGA Tour, but obviously the local competitions have been going on for a while. This is week 2 for the PGA. Jim Furyk made history by winning in his debut on the Champions Tour last week in Michigan. So the gang's all here. European Tour is playing too. It's a major championship week. We're finally feeling some senses of normalcy, at least in one way. No fans at these venues, but everyone's back in action now.
Well, sure, although you also do have to put the flag a little bit. LPGA has had a couple of positive player tests, and just today announced a positive caddy test as well. One of the positive player tests actually is Marina Alex, and she was within 10 days, so she is actually expected to tee it up in the field this week in Toledo, so that's an angle that I will definitely look at, getting the chance to possibly talk to her as she gets her feet under her after this COVID diagnosis, and just the experience and now experiencing it being in the bubble. So, of course, now you have that concern as well, and I'm sure you have the concerns across the pond as well. And PGA Tour champions, it didn't seem like anybody tested positive, but now there's a week down, and then everything resumes back in Akron next week. Of course, famous Firestone Country Club. For me personally, I mean, it's good to see the local angles. It's good to see so much local competition. I know that there have been a couple postponements, a couple of when's everything going to resume. Of course, maybe some bad luck on timing with a little bit more spikes hitting, with restaurants starting to close down and open at 25% capacity, outdoor seating, what the state decides to do about that, and even further as the state makes some decisions on colleges and who stays and who goes and who is able to learn remotely and hybrid, and how that affects some of the golf teams as they try to pursue any sort of semblance of a fall sports season. That'll be an interesting one to follow, although, of course, we've had some bad news already in that regard. But on the LPGA side, it's going to be good to see. I mean, last week, of course, Danielle Kang was able to hold off the field at Inverness, although it took every last hold in all, 54, because it was a 3-day event in order to do so. And Inverness was probably one of the toughest non-major tests that the LPGA's ever had. And I think after the first day, it kind of reared its head similar to how Muirfield did. Just the length was overwhelming. There was definitely some penalizing areas, but the players viewed it all as fair, and everybody came away with positive outlooks. And it was nice to have Inverness come up first as a Solheim Cup site, but also more so, just like what the PGA was able to do, double up Toledo and Sylvania, obviously very, very close in proximity, and be able to have that experience, be able to play with limited movement on the bubble. Of course, yours truly coming in for 2 days, so I guess I might pop. Hopefully, I don't pop the bubble or anything of that respect. I obviously mean no harm, but it'll be interesting to see. I mean, of course, there are some LPGA Tour players that are from overseas that elected not to make the trip for a variety of COVID-related reasons, including Se-Young Kim, who was last year's Marathon Classic presented by Dana winner. World number 1 Jin Young Ko is also another one among several others. So some are erring on the side of caution, while I believe the lowest, highest, whatever the terminology is, rated in the field, Nelly Korda will be teeing it up among others, including Lexi Thompson. The list goes on. So and of course, Danielle Kang will be back to try to go back-to-back with wins and double up on the Toledo swing here. But it's interesting to see how everything will proceed. I've kind of got a glimpse of things. The email list for the bubble on the LPGA, since I'm sure inquiring minds want to know, is 40. So we'll see how many people actually show up from each outlet to determine what that bubble is. And again, like I said last week, it'll be interesting to experience that. I'm going to try to follow Rachel Rana around a little bit to get the local angle. And of course, I have a U.S. Women's Amateur angle that I'm also chasing as well, provided Hurricane Isaias lets me pursue that angle. Obviously, I hope that everybody's being able to watch this with full power in the Pittsburgh and Western Pennsylvania area. Some of that Isaias rain kind of reared its ugly head throughout the day today. So today, Tuesday, when we're filming this. So hopefully everybody's safe in that regard. But yeah, it's good to see so much golf come back. It's good to see golf come back. I just hope that we're able to continue to have golf come back. The tests remain limited, and that they don't pull a Miami Marlins or a St. Louis Cardinals or Rob Manfred or anything else like that, and that we can play on. I mean, it's good to see that pretty much every sport, with the exception of baseball, has had very, very good to moderately successful early returns. And golf has definitely played a part with that social distancing that we've harkened on so many times. But for golf to be able to have so many local events in Western Pennsylvania anytime is always a good thing. But especially now, it really makes you feel a little bit of gratification just for the process and how seriously the tournaments are with taking these safety measures, and how seriously in turn the players are taking these processes as well. So now it'll be interesting to see how on a more national scale, how the LPGA is handling things in the early infancies of the restart. The European Tour seems to be doing a good job. PGA Tour champions, inconclusive. It's only been a week, and they have a week off in between before Akron. So it's nice to see everything back up full speed ahead. Let's just hope it stays that way.
A lot of times in golf, August is when things start to wind down, at least on the professional tours. And especially last year when the PGA Tour moved everything up a little bit. They moved the PGA Championship, of course, out of August over to May, and they want to get everything more front-loaded. That's not an option this year. And we're just revving up in the world of golf in a lot of ways. We have both men's and women's professional majors coming up, and plenty of big-time amateur tournaments, both nationally and locally, still on tap. And we'll have the coverage of all that for you, whether it's here on the Par 4 video or in writing on PittsburghGolfNow.com. Zach will be on location, like he said, in Sylvania, the suburb of Toledo, for the LPGA Marathon Classic. And I mentioned already, we'll have some local tournament coverage as well, from the juniors on up to the local pros and some of the top-level amateurs too. For Zach Weiss, I'm Matt Gajtka. This has been the PGA Par 4. We'll see you next time and talk to you next week. Bye-bye.